Hi, I'm Karen Kavanaugh, and I work for USAID in the Office of Health Systems, which is a new office in the Bureau for Global Health.
Hi, my name is Kari Diener, and I work with Mercy Corps.
Hi, I'm Larry Cooley, President of MSI, and very happy to have been here as part of the meeting for the last couple of days.
I think this conference has been really important to us because it's something that Mercy Corps has been thinking about for a long time as an agency. We have been undertaking an 8-month process of looking at this internally to Mercy Corps as well, and we have done partnership interviews in 12 countries where we've actually been talking to our local partners in the governments of different countries, in the civil society, both formal and informal, and also in business sector in different countries where we're working to really understand their reactions to local ownership and what it means for them on the ground, and then trying to translate those reflections back here to the USAID Forward reform process in Washington.
If I were singling out 5 things that really spoke to me during the course of the 5 days, these would be them. First, it's really difficult to know whether something is a cycle or a trend, but I'm pretty sure that some of the things we're talking about really are trends. These are things that are quite different now than they were in years before, and in particular I'd single out the fact that the world that we used to operate in was one where aid was a dominant factor, both because there were a few donors and because ODA was a very important part of what countries had to do development with. Neither of those is the prevailing assumption right now. If you take that and transform from the notion of aid as a strategic force to aid as a minority shareholder, you get a very different picture of how aid intervenes with systems and how aid can be a positive force in trying to move those systems into the future.
I thought it was very interesting to hear the idea of rinky-dinkism, my favorite new word from the seminar, and that is basically the risk of us doing many activities that simply don't add up to change. Another favorite of mine is a new definition we heard today for capacity building, which is essentially a supply-driven bottomless pit.
Well, I think that for me, I've really had 3 key takeaways from this conference. The first is that we really need to move away from linear thinking and that we really need a more flexible program model moving forward. I think that if we can think about programs in a more iterative way, we can begin to feedback in some of the, I guess what's been termed as fabulous failures, and understand how we can translate those into a meaningful dialogue and a process of reflection and improvement moving forward.
Second thing I'd say about the changing context is the fact that there's now much more of a global consensus around what foreign aid is supposed to do and not supposed to do in the countries in which it operates, and a much different context here in the United States about how foreign aid fits into our national purpose. If you take those arguments forward, once again, it has a lot of implications for aid in the way it integrates with host country systems. That's all point 1. Point 2 is, if you turn to the question of where aid's comparative advantage is, it's clear to me, perhaps clear to others, that aid has a comparative advantage in places where some form of technical assistance or some form of hands-on policy dialogue is critical to trying to move host country systems forward. That's by no means the case in all the countries we operate. It's certainly not all the sectors we operate. But where it is the case, and particularly where a country is going through an important transition and is open to and even solicitous of outside help, aid has a very particular role to play.
And then a story that I find very compelling because it talks about the time lag in systems activities and the unpredictability of results. And that is the story of a program for Kenyan exchange students to come to the United States, which eventually resulted in the production of our current US president. Probably not something they put in their results report, but something that shows how system interventions can have long after and unintended consequences and unpredictable consequences.
Second, I think we really need to get the what of partnership right, and we need to understand what USAID wants out of partners. Do they want partners that respond to USAID objectives and ideas, clones, I guess to say, or are they looking for partners that bring their own voice into this? And I think that in the last 2 days, we've really begun to explore that topic in greater depth and understand really the need to go down deeper and to have dialogues with people, not only at the national government level about what ownership means for them, but also at the regional level, at the local level, and with people who are actually working at the grassroots level and in communities and benefiting from projects at that very small, close to the ground area.
Third point I'd like to make is that in talking about systems, it's very easy to talk past each other, and I think we sometimes did that in the session. One concept of system means host country financial management and procurement systems. That's the concept of system that was really most prominent in the Busan discussions. In our conversations here, that was part of the discussion, but it was sometimes conflated with a much larger notion of systems thinking, things like the healthcare system or the value supply, the value chain system. While those two things obviously inform each other, they're not the same thing, and it's going to be important going forward to try and keep those distinctions as clear as possible.
There were some quite interesting insights in the workshop. One was that our work takes place in a historical context that makes a difference. We are working in an era that's post 9/11, post the USSR, fall of the Soviet Union, following on the ICT revolution. We're facing rapid economic growth of low and middle income partner countries, and the shifting global roles of some of our former development assistance beneficiaries who are now in fact our development assistance partners. So for example, Brazil and India.
And a third sort of reflection from today is that donors are a part of the system whether they like it or not, and that we need to sort of turn that mirror backwards and say, you know, what role can USAID or other donors play when they are the system, they influence the system, and beginning to really be honest about that role, and to also begin to understand what roles other actors within this sort of universe can play and will play moving forward.
The fourth point I would make is that there's a danger, I think a genuine danger, of falling between the stools of analysis and action on this. These are very complicated issues, and I think we were right as a group to use words like complex and complicated. But if we get wrapped around the axle in our own analysis and don't translate quickly enough from analysis to action, I think we miss a real opportunity and run the risk of losing our own constituency on this. The other related point on that, for me, is that there's a temptation to do the analysis first and the engaging of stakeholders second. I think we need to reverse that order and engage stakeholders first, and then have them be part of the conversation that informs the analysis.
Yeah. What I also found very helpful about this meeting is that we got to the point of having really actionable recommendations. And one of them that seems very practical is start somewhere. So even though the system analysis can be quite complex and the system has many components, we don't necessarily have to work on the whole system. So we can look at a system, understand it, and then choose to intervene in the part of the system where we have a comparative advantage and where a country wants our support. Another important action step that we can take is to strengthen feedback loops, and this plays into the notion of increasing accountability. We already do a great deal to help countries build up the information that they have about the dynamics of development, and that is an important function that we can play that actually strengthens systems and is welcome from developing countries. We heard that in the course of the meeting. We can work with other partners who have money, who bring money to the table, so that we're jointly designing solutions to problems. And particularly, we heard this from our mission director in India, we can work to find partners where they're interested in developing viable business models, not working only for corporate social responsibility. We want to start our work with a clear plan for how we exit or how we transition, and we've also heard how we transform. We want that to be an intentional part of our planning process. We can also, as one of the mission directors, I think the mission director from Ghana suggested, for every country system that we use, we should have a plan for strengthening that system. So that should be part of our normal business model. And then another very important thing that we can do as a follow-up to this workshop is to identify the many country examples of where we've done system strengthening, and document those and share those and extract the lessons that we can apply to future experiences. And then finally, another very actionable recommendation is that we engage in the policy dialogue, that we don't limit ourselves to considering and working on development as a technical issue, but also consider the policy context and engage in the policy dialogue.
And finally, my last point is that if we're really serious about system strengthening, we need to be willing to invest in strengthening those systems, not just using them, but strengthening them. And I'm fearful that as we go to more and more earmarked money and more focus on direct production of results and outcomes, that we'll lose our willingness and our ability and our resources for trying to invest in the systems themselves and make them perform better.